Hello. Recently, I had the privilege to sit down with Joe and Scott from the Regent Hall Salvation Army to chat about one of their songs that they've written, The Calling. So enjoy this episode of Musical Musings in partnership with Abide Worship and listen to how God is using these two people to write beautiful music for His glory. And make sure to stay tuned to the end of this podcast where we have a special performance from Joe and Scott of this song, The Calling.
I will stop and breathe in your presence. Just breathe. Just breathe.
Hello and welcome to Selah, Time to Pause, and welcome to my two very special guests, Joe and Scott. We saw you both on Abide Worship as you led us on the 6th of March. So check out the link. So tell us a bit about yourselves, if that's all right.
Yes, so I go to Regent Hall. That was my sort of first taste of Salvation Army Church. And I've been going there since 2016.
Amazing, yeah. And I also go to Regent Hall. My parents are Salvation Army officers, so I've kind of grown up in the army. So it's everything I've ever known. I did have a time when I kind of stepped away from church, but then came back and found my home at Regent Hall, and I've been there ever since. So yeah, over 10 years now, I think, which is crazy.
When you say that was your first experience of the army, Scott, what was life like before?
Yeah, so that was the Salvation Army is my first church. I was basically invited to whilst I was studying at uni, I was invited to go to a concert and was like, yeah, sure, I'll, come support you, come listen. And I was then like, oh, okay, this is, interesting. And then was like, well, let's see what it's like on a Sunday. And then I always say I've been like trapped ever since and have just never left. So
nice, excellent. So you've recorded a beautiful song for us called The Calling. It's a great song that I feel calls and convicts us to serve others.
This is our calling to help those fallen, to rise up again, to feel that they can, with the power, enduring power that comes from the King. And that's why I will sing of the calling.
So how this kind of started, and all kind of music starts, is words came to me and a melody came to me, and I kind of write them in my phone. So I got voice memos of kind of me just singing a cappella, any ideas or thoughts that come to my mind. And then I kind of write down the lyrics, and then I'm not musical enough to write them out. I don't play an instrument or anything, so I often rely on friends like Scott to help me kind of flesh out the music and bring it to life. So yeah, me and him sat down, I think it was 2019 actually, when we first sat down at the piano in my parents' house. Scott was playing piano and we kind of felt it and had like a first kind of verse and chorus of this song, The Calling. And then we kind of left it until I would say like last year, and then we picked it up again and was like, I think there's something in this. We were working on other music and we were like, let's look at what this. Me and Scott have loads of like back catalogue of stuff that we've worked on over the years. Yeah. And it was just, this was one that kind of stood out to us as one that we felt would resonate and maybe people would like to hear, and it was close to our hearts. So yeah, we just kind of worked on it and fleshed it out.
And we actually have a recording as well of that first day, and it is it's hilarious. I mean, it's really bad, but it's always like fascinating for me to see like the way the process changes and how like the song changes. Like I would say I'm much better at editing songs than I am at writing songs. So what tends to happen is that I make it as simple as I can the first time, and then I just slowly go, okay, well, what about this? It'd be cooler if it went to this, or how about this? Could we do that instead? And then obviously it's sometimes like we'll change the melody or we'll change things to like phrasing and just to sort of work around it. And then we go from like this one thing, and then where it becomes is just something completely different. And yeah, as I said, that voice note is like, it has some like, there are some principles obviously that sort of continued, but really that it's so much different.
Yeah. I think that almost gift and almost skill of being able to change something as you go along kind of shows that, I want to say, humility that comes across in this song. in the first verse, I almost felt an element of guilt that we admit that we've fallen short through the submission and admission that we can admit that we can be cleaned ourselves in order to serve others.
When we all stumble in a world that crumbles, it's because we let it that way. So much made out of clay. We've been sleeping while so many weeping, calling out for help. Can they drink from the well? We were made to be the hands, reaching out to make a stand.
Talk us through a little bit about the inspiration behind that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the lyrics, I have so many lyrics in my phone. There's so much that just like comes to me, whether I'm in the shower, I'll sing out loud, or whether I'm cooking or whether I'm at church or whatever, and someone says something and it will spark kind of a phrase or a thought, or maybe the whole verse or a whole chorus, or like sometimes the entire song just kind of flows out of me, and I write it down. But for this, it was the idea of like, we live in a fragile world, and a lot of that is down to our doing, and we can get so clouded in what we want and what is our journey and our path, when actually it's about aligning to the calling that we all have in our lives. And so that first verse is like you say, the realization of that, and the understanding that we're broken people and we live in a broken world, and a lot of that is down to us. And then it's about, a lot of this kind of stems with William Booth's Our Fight speech, because like the idea of, while women weep as they do now, I'll fight. And so it's like that idea of, while people weep, while we kind of search through life, there's people that need our help. And so it's to step into that calling of helping others. And the idea of the Salvation Army, obviously, heart to God, hand to man, has been around for a long time. And that kind of idea of, we need to give of ourselves, and out of giving ourselves to God, we'll be able to, God fills us with the Spirit to go and help those who need it the most. And so that's kind of where it kind of landed. And I love that phrase, heart to God, hand to man, because I remember I sang the line, heaven's perfect plan, and then I was like, what's going to rhyme with that? And I was like, heart to God, hand to man. And I was like, it just fell so beautifully. And yeah, some of these words are my favorite out of all the songs that I've ever written.
And that first verse, like you said, sets up the chorus so beautifully. Like that, heart to God, hand to man, then changed to kind of the Salvation Army's motto to love God, love others. But the way the verse flows into the chorus, it's like, in order to be able to love God fully, we need to serve others, and that's how we love God, in loving others. Are there any specific Bible verses that influenced you in this song?
I would say not a specific Bible verse, but the story of the disciples stepping out of the boat and onto the sea, where Jesus calls us out of the boat, and that idea of, we need to take the step. God is calling us out. God is calling us to be and do, and it takes for us to take that step to be able to kind of fulfill that mission. And so that idea of stepping out of the boat, especially a boat where we're drifting, so like that second verse of, we've been drifting across the waters, it's time to listen again and let the captain come in. Like, God is guiding that boat, but we need to make sure that we're kind of utilizing our own skills and experiences, and God will guide the boat, but we need to kind of move the sails to go with the wind, otherwise we're just fighting against it.
We've been drifting across the waters. It's time to listen again, to let the captain come in. This is your mission, be thou our vision. Heaven's perfect plan, heart to God and hand to man. We were made to be the hands, reaching out to make a stand. This is
so yeah, that's kind of where I landed with it. It was a lot of different themes coming in. So obviously the Salvation Army, church, and then William Booth and his Our Fight speech, and that idea of kind of reigniting passion, and then that story of the disciples on the boat and being called out onto the water, because we can't just sit in a boat that's stagnant and drifting. I mean, we can, but it's not what we were made for. So it's kind of like a passion thing.
Yeah, I also pulled out the book because the chorus really makes me think of James chapter 2, 14 to 17, where it's talking about faith without works is dead. And it's our calling as Christians is to help those people, to get them to rise up again, to make make them feel that way. But that it comes from the King, and that's what it's talking about. It's that we're not just saying, I think the example gives in here, is poorly clothed and lacking in daily food. Don't just sort of give them the food. You know what I mean? It's that it's the two things together that make us Christians. Almost, it's like we can't just be doing one. It has to come from both, and that power that we get and the ability to help those people is coming from Jesus. It's coming from God, and I think that's the sort of, it helps resonates with that particular passage.
I think when I was listening to it, I picked out a different verse which kind of speaks of the same things. In 2 Corinthians 5, it's talking about our calling for reconciliation and to help reconcile. That's our true calling, and that's kind of, I guess, the amalgamation of all the different parts of the songs is like, through humility we come, and it's through God's power that we do this serving, and through God's power that we're helping other people, and kind of we're here to be encouraged ourselves as well as encourage other people, so we're all in it together. I don't know if that's what you were planning to get through this song, but that's definitely what I got through this song, so I appreciate that. I'd also be interested to know what was like musically in this song. What were your inspirations? Why has it come across so, I want to say, mellow, and so, you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. So like, especially sort of the intro and outro, it's very sort of spacious. It's leaving room to breathe. I'm a big fan of sort of like ambient kind of music and leaving space within music. And I think when I did my degree, I did a lot about the feeling of music and sort of how an environments and the sort of atmosphere that music can create. It's like, you want people to feel relaxed. I wanted an atmosphere, I wanted an emotion, I wanted a certain sort of feeling, and it's the way that the song, I was playing around with some sounds, getting some things going. I don't even think it was specifically for the song, but just in general, and just I noticed there are a few ways that we could have incorporated that into the song, that the verse, leaving it really sort of open and taking the time to build this. And then when it comes into the chorus, it's the fact that in that humility, as you mentioned sort of before, that sort of failings, that struggles, and then it's sort of that transitional change into, no, this is our calling, and it's that decision to make a step forwards and to be strong. And then I know that might sound sort of counterintuitive, because then by the end it goes back to sort of that being mellow, but it was about just sort of thinking about that now, and maybe by the end it's then reflecting on what you've just heard, what you've experienced, and that excitement, and then it's just sort of bringing it back to letting you reflect and sort of opening, having that space for people to, maybe it's worship, reflect, read, think, whatever. It's just, it's about an atmosphere. It's about a general direction, and regards to sort of influences, maybe not like specific songs, but someone like Josh Gorton, who's done quite a lot of sort of Christian ambient stuff where there's lots of sort of space, and Pat Barrett does it a couple of times where he's then just leaving lots of room to just sort of say what's come into his mind. And that's sort of how we did this, that sort of outro, that none of the words, that nothing that Joe sort of sings at the end is planned. It's just when he was recording it at the time, that's how it comes out. It's just listening and just reflecting.
I think, influencers, definitely Pat Barrett and Corey Asprey, I think, are two artists that me and Scott kind of listen to a lot. And Pat Barrett's first album, especially, a lot of, almost on every song, he's got like an outro, which is just ad-lib, worshipful. It's space just for the spirit to move. And I think we like this, especially leading worship at the Rink on Sundays, that idea of not just finishing the song and just, cool, we're done. It's allowing that space to move without kind of clouding the space with stuff. And that the words at the end, we were made to be the hands reaching out to make a stand. That actually was the bridge when we first wrote this. And so it was like in the middle of the song, and we kind of repeated it. But then when we spent a day at the rink just kind of recording and working on music and stuff, and we came to this song and we just kind of went, cool, we'll feel it. And it was kind of the end of the song, and Scott was just playing through these chords, and it was atmospheric and it was very kind of spacious. And then that's where it was totally kind of not planned, and I was just ad-libbing over the top, and that's kind of where what was a bridge just became like a thought or just a phrase at the end, to leave that and give it space, because music is about feeling, right? And I like that we kind of went into this and just kind of felt it. And at that time when we were working on it, that ending, we just kind of felt it without it being structured, and just kind of let the music and let the spirit just move while we were recording it and feeling it. And it just felt right. And actually, when we were doing it the first time round, like, Scott probably went on for another minute and a half, 2 minutes, and we were just kind of we were just so in the moment of kind of worship. And I think that's, especially when me and Scott come together, we're very conscious of not just singing the music and just playing the music and just being in it, but feeling it and what that music is saying and what it's for. So yeah, it was beautiful. And so that's kind of how we left it.
I think that those words, if we are made to be the hands, we must reach out and make a stand, kind of the space that you made for each individual to reflect on that, because that obviously means something different to everybody. Like, how do we serve? How can we make a stand in our own way? What is Jesus telling us as individuals? And I guess that's so important, as well as asking God for all these things in prayer and in worship. We need to listen to him in our own way.
Yeah. I think with this song as well, I think part of it comes from frustration as well. Frustration for myself and not just other people in the church. But I think we've built this kind of organized religion of church that so often can become insular. So we go to church on a Sunday and we kind of sit and receive and just soak it in and then leave. And then it's like, what do we do with the word that we receive? What do we do with the worship and the space and the atmosphere that we've been in? Do we just kind of leave it on a Sunday, or do we take it with us and kind of pour that out just as we've received? And I think, rightly or wrongly, like, COVID has I think affected that a little bit. A lot of people are, including myself, a lot more lazy coming back to church, and priorities have been kind of refreshed and what have you, and rightly. But then I think we've let go of some of the stuff that we kind of had a drive and passion for before. And also for the Salvation Army, I have big frustrations with the fact that obviously back in the day it was about soup, soap and salvation, and we've kind of split that. And so you have soup and soap for our social work and that kind of thing, but then salvation is separate, and it doesn't go as hand in hand as it used to. Now, I'm saying that as a general thing, because there's definitely places where that absolutely happens, but for the context that I've been in, and in many occasions it's not been one and the same. And so for this song, and I'm not saying it's other people and it's not me, it's 100% me. It's just about finding that reignited passion again to support and help others. And Sunday is actually a beautiful example of that. So I needed the toilet during the meeting, so I kind of rushed out and I went and got a drink of water afterwards as well. And rather than going and sitting back in, I kind of stayed in the kind of lobby, and I could hear the sermon going on and what have you. I was kind of still paying attention, but not inside the meeting. And this guy walked in off the street, and he told me his name was Michael and that he was experiencing homelessness and he wanted a coffee. And I was like, I'll get you a coffee, no problem. So I bought him a coffee from the coffee shop, and he was clearly in a space of, he didn't really know what to do. Like he walked in and he said, can I have a coffee? And I was like, yeah, sure. What do you want? Do you want a latte, cappuccino, that kind of thing? Because we have a coffee shop, and so it's not just like filter coffee. And he was like, I don't know, I'm homeless. He just wanted coffee, 100, like the basics of coffee. So I ordered him a latte anyway, and he kind of took it and was grateful. And he went into the meeting and stood in the main hall. Everyone's kind of sat down. He just stood and kind of waited for a moment. He was listening, and then he came out and he thanked me for the coffee. And then he walked out. And as he was walking out, he said, Revelation 12 verse 7 or Revelation 2 verse 7. And that's the final word. That's all he said. He just walked out the door. And I was like, I wonder what that is. So I looked it up, and it was something along the lines of Michael and his angels were fighting against the dragon, and the dragon was fighting back. And in my head I was like, he's clearly fighting a battle that we don't understand, don't know. And for me to have stepped out of what church is for the, like in its purest form, to be in that space with him was a beautiful moment for me, just to kind of, I think it was humbling to be like, people are fighting battles, and maybe me saying hello to him, asking what his name is, or just chatting to him or buying him coffee was just what he needed or whatever. And it was a tiny thing, but I don't know what the impact of that would have. And it was that idea of, if we're so ingrained in being inside the building, what are we going to miss outside of the building? So that's kind of, it's not a look at me, I bought this guy a coffee thing. It's more of it was a humbling thing for me to be like, if I hadn't been outside of the room, I wouldn't have had that opportunity to meet Michael, and for him to kind of chat to me and play a part in blessing me that day. And I think this song is a part of that. It's like, our calling is not to sit inside and just receive and just listen to the sermons and sing songs and be involved in the church, in the room. It's, what do we do outside of the room to support those who need it most?
I guess that sermon from William Booth, the Others, is his famously short sermon. That's what we're called here to do, rather than being in the building with like-minded people who believe the same thing. We're called to go out for other people, for them, and ask them, kind of the way Jesus worked was asking people what they wanted or how they needed help. And I guess that's exactly, although you weren't doing it, telling that story to show how good you were. Well done anyway.
Thanks. It was a beautiful thing. And the fact that he kind of went out and just, like, he shouted Revelation 12 verse 7, and I was like, okay, like, I don't know what you want me to do with that. And then I just kind of looked up, and it was his name, and he obviously has seen and read that verse before and gone, that is me. Like, he is Michael, that's who he identifies as, and he is fighting a battle, and I don't know what that battle is, but it was a beautiful thing of, I want to help Michael, I want to help more people like Michael, and that's not going to happen if we're just sat inside.
Yep.
And that was a realization for me.
You kind of answered the question that I was going to ask before, but how do you hope listeners to this song will be impacted and inspired by it?
That's tough. I mean, I don't really have like a direct answer to that. I don't necessarily want people to think in any particular way. Like, I've been reading a book at the minute, and a large part of this book is about how the author is talking about their experience and what they've done and what they think their failings are, and how they've learned to do when they're doing things again, how to do it better. And I think a lot of that has just been, a lot of the ends of the sections, ends of the chapters are very much you reflecting on that. He doesn't really give you the answers to the things that he thinks are wrong, but it makes you reflect on that. And I guess I would hope that people are just reflecting on what their journey is looking like at the minute. Like, what are they doing? How are they behaving? What's going on in their life? How can they make a difference to the world? Or even if it's not just the wider world, because obviously that's quite a big thing to say, I'm going to do this and it's going to impact every single person, but just the world around you and the people that you interact with, the people that you know, the people you don't know. And I think that would probably be my thoughts on it, just to reflect on the words, reflect on how it impacts you and your life. And if there are changes you want to make them. I guess that would be the thing.
I would say, I think it comes down to, obviously Jesus said the two greatest commandments are love the Lord your God and love thy neighbor. And so when we're talking about the Salvation Army Church, which is a church that we're all involved with, the idea of heart to God and hand to man, and love God and love others, that's the bottom line. That's the simplicity of it. And for us, it's to not forget that. And I, with especially music like this, that has a kind of a passionate kind of message of, we need to do this, I'm also telling myself, because there's many times that I've not stepped out and helped someone when I probably could have, or had an awkward conversation that would have felt really awkward for me, but that person really needed it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's that idea of stepping out, because we're called to do more with God than through our own strength. And So the anxieties and the worries of, oh, I don't know if I can help that person because it might feel weird, or I can't do that, or whatever our anxieties and worries are about that situation that we have not yet done, God will totally give us everything we need to be able to do that task, to be able to help that person, to be able to have that conversation that might be difficult. And so it's just a repositioning, reformatting within myself, and hopefully for anyone that hears this song, that it will be a re-realization of what our calling is, and it is just to love God and love others.
Yeah, I guess it kind of resonated with me something you said earlier, Scott, which about the chorus changing vibes into being this is what we're going to do, we need to be confident in it. And I think you were almost apologetic in that, but like you said, Joe, we don't need to be apologetic in being confident in who our God is and who the power comes from, and in being confident through that, that's when we can truly fulfill our calling, I guess, the calling.
Yeah. I think the thing about the vibe change as well, that when the chorus comes in and the drums come in, it's almost giving drive to exactly what we're saying at that moment. It's like you've had that space, we've had that kind of lament and realization of the world that we're living in and what we've kind of made it, and then it's like, but this is our calling, so the drive and passion behind it hopefully shines through in the music as well as the words. But yeah.
When we all stumble in a world that crumbles, it's because we let it that way. So much made out of clay. We've been sleeping while so many weeping, calling out for help. Can they drink from the well? We were made to be the hands, reaching out to make a stand. This is our calling, to help those fallen, to rise up again, to feel that they can, with the power, enduring power that comes from the King. And that's why I will sing of the calling. We've been drifting across the waters. It's time to listen again, to let the captain come in. This is your mission, be thou our vision. Heaven's perfect plan, heart to God and hand to man. We were made to be the hands, reaching out to make a stand. This is our calling, to help those fallen, to rise up again, to feel that they can, with the power, enduring power that comes from the King. And that's why I will sing. This is our calling, to help those fallen, to rise up again, to feel that they can, with the power, enduring power that comes from the King. And that's why I will sing of the calling. We were made to be the hands, reaching out to make a stand. We were made to be the hands, to reach out and make a stand. extend. We will reach out our hands. Ooh.